Every single person you admire for their strength, their calm, their unshakable presence, they all have one thing in common. They learn to do what most people never do. They learn to pause before they explode. Anger is not a small problem. It is not a personality quirk or a bad habit you can laugh off. The Stoics believed anger was one of the most dangerous forces a human being could unleash, not because of what it does to others, but because of what it does to you. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, commander of armies, a man who had every reason in the world to let rage rule him, wrote in his private journals that the person who cannot govern themselves cannot govern anything. He was not writing for an audience. He was writing to remind himself. That detail matters. Even the most powerful man in the Western world had to fight this battle daily. Seneca, one of history's sharpest minds, wrote an entire essay on anger. He called it a brief madness, not a passion, not a flaw, a madness, a temporary loss of the very thing that makes you human, your reason. And Epictetus, who was born a slave, who had everything taken from him and still chose dignity over bitterness, taught that nothing outside you has the power to disturb your inner world unless you hand over that power yourself. 3 very different men, 3 very different lives, 1 unified truth. Anger is something that happens inside you, and that means it is something you can change. That is where we begin. Before you can master something, you have to understand what it is truly costing you. Most people think of anger as a release, a pressure valve, something that actually helps them cope. Research and philosophy both disagree. Seneca wrote that anger has never helped a single person think more clearly, fight more skillfully, or make a better decision. It feels powerful in the moment because it floods you with energy, but that energy is borrowed. You always pay it back with interest. Think about the last time you lost your temper. Really think about it. Did you say something you regret? Did you damage a relationship, even slightly? Did you feel exhausted afterward, hollowed out, maybe even ashamed? That is not strength. That is a storm passing through a house and leaving damage behind. The Stoics had a concept they returned to constantly, the idea that virtue is the only true good. And virtue, in their understanding, meant excellence of character. It meant being the best version of a rational, social human being. Anger, unchecked, destroys exactly that. It makes you say things you do not mean. It makes you act in ways that contradict your own values. It shrinks you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that when you wake in the morning, you should remind yourself that you will meet difficult people, people who are rude, ungrateful, arrogant. And he said this not to make you bitter, but to make you ready. Not ready to fight, but ready to respond with clarity. Because the real cost of anger is not the argument you had. It is the version of yourself you become when you let it lead. That version is always smaller than who you want to be. Here is the most important idea in all of Stoic teaching on anger, and it is deceptively simple. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space. Most people never find that space. They react so fast they believe they had no choice. But the Stoics insisted that the choice is always there. Epictetus taught that we do not control what happens in the world, but we always control our response to it. Always. This is not a poetic idea, it is a practical one. Neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited thousands of years ago. The emotional brain fires before the rational brain catches up. But the rational brain can and does override it if you train it. The Stoics called this training ascesis, deliberate practice, not meditation in the modern sense, though stillness helps. Practice in the form of daily examination. Seneca recommended reviewing each day before sleep. What triggered you today? How did you respond? What would a wiser version of you have done? That nightly audit is how you slowly, steadily expand that space between stimulus and response. And here is what no one tells you. Anger very rarely arrives alone. It almost always comes with a story. Someone cut you off in traffic, and the story is that they are selfish and they disrespected you. Your colleague dismisses your idea, and the story is that they think you are worthless. The Stoics would stop you right there. They would ask, is that actually what happened? Or is that the meaning you layered on top of what happened? Because the event and the story are not the same thing. Separate them, find the space. That is where your freedom lives. Knowing that the space exists is one thing, learning to live in it is another. The Stoics did not believe in passive insight. They believed in daily active practice. Marcus Aurelius did not just understand Stoicism, he rehearsed it every morning, every evening in the pages of what we now call the Meditations. He reminded himself of the same principles over and over because he knew that the mind forgets what it does not repeat. So what does retraining actually look like when it comes to anger? Seneca offered one technique that still holds up today. He called it the delay. When something provokes you, your only job in that first moment is to not act. Not yet. Say nothing. Do nothing. Let a few breaths pass. Even 10 seconds changes the chemistry of that moment. The sharpest edge of anger dulls almost instantly if you do not feed it. Epictetus offered another angle. He asked his students to consider the other person, not to excuse them, but to understand them. He said that every person who does wrong does so because they believe in that moment that it is the right or necessary thing to do. They are operating from their own limited understanding, their own fears, their own past. That does not make their behavior acceptable, but it makes it human. And when you see someone as human rather than as an enemy, your anger loses some of its fuel. Marcus Aurelius took this further. He wrote that we are all interconnected, all part of the same whole. To rage at another person is, in a sense, to rage at a part of yourself. That reframe alone, practiced consistently, has the power to soften reactions that once felt completely automatic. This is not weakness. This is the hardest kind of strength there is. Seneca wrote one of the most quoted lines in all of Stoic philosophy. He said that anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Most people have heard it. Far fewer have truly let it land. Because when you carry anger, when you hold on to it, rehearse it, feed it with new grievances every day, you are the one being harmed. The other person has often moved on. They may not even know you're still thinking about them. You are the one lying awake. You are the one whose body is flooded with cortisol. You are the one whose relationships are suffering, whose focus is fractured, whose peace is gone. The Stoics were not asking you to be a pushover. They were not asking you to smile and say nothing when something is genuinely wrong. They believed in speaking clearly, acting decisively, and standing for what is right. But from a calm center, not a burning one. The difference between those two stances is everything. One is power. The other is chaos wearing the mask of power. The life the Stoics were pointing toward is not a life without difficulty. It is a life where difficulty no longer owns you, where someone can say the wrong thing and you do not unravel, where things can go wrong and you do not collapse, where the storms of the world can rage and you remain, in Seneca's words, unshaken. that is the life that is available to you, one practice, one pause, one choice at a time. If this changed how you see anger, even slightly, do this channel a favor. Hit like and subscribe. There is so much more ancient wisdom waiting for you here, and it is the kind that actually makes a difference.